If you have a PC and you haven't tried sim racing, you really should, because this hobby is probably one of the best gaming experiences you're going to have. But it's also one of those hobbies where a lot of people will spend inordinate amounts of money pursuing more immersion. So big screen, since they're beyond to for review, but anyways, I have an affiliate link with them. If you want to help the channel out, they don't get to see this review before launch and they don't interfere with the process at all. That's how it works. This has been an interesting piece of kit to review because every single review that I've seen beforehand during this year, everybody talks about this like the best thing ever since sliced bread. But for some reason, I seem to have with this headset some sort of gluten sensitivity. First of all, a big thank you to all the subscribers and members for helping the channel out. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible to do these reviews at all. If you want to help the channel out, please press like, subscribe, and why not become a channel member. Thank you. A bit of my VR background. I own a very old and tired Oculus Rift CV1 from almost 8 or 9 years ago. In reality, could argue that originally this channel was built around this and was known around this because one of my first, in reality, my only viral hit on YouTube was going downhill on Akina with an AE86. Last VR headset I reviewed was around 2 years ago with the PSVR 2, which is quite an interesting piece of kit for what it intends to do. Even though I've used this headset for years, in reality, I fell out of love with VR because it tends to be big, tends to be clunky, it tends to be quite a physical thing. My face sweats a lot. There's this complicated process of setting everything up and getting it ready for VR. And to be honest, I much prefer using something like this, a 55-inch TV, which, even though it doesn't have the depth perception that VR gives you, it gives you a pretty good experience. However, this little thing, literally very little thing, seems to fix most of the complaints I have with VR. It's light, it is low profile, it is fairly unobtrusive, so most of the VR's VRness is fixed for me. How could not this be a good thing? The big screen Beyond 2 starts at £1,100, $1,200, and roughly €1,350 depending on the country. You can add around 200 for the 2E version that will have eye tracking, but there's also other types of accessories here, and even a custom faceplate that they sent for this review as well. I must say that the process to do these is kind of suboptimal because you do require an iPhone to make it work, and lo and behold, I have an Android. They also have a set of gloves which you can get for free if you use the code random callsign for the Beyond 2 and the Beyond 2E, and that will run for about 3 weeks after September 25th. This headset boasts micro-LED screens pushing 2560 by 2560 per eye with a contrast ratio of 500,000 to 1, going all the way to 90 Hz with upscaling in a 116 FOV. For that, they mention that your computer needs to have a minimum of a quad-core and a 2070. But sim racing means sim racing, and everything is as well optimized as a toaster running Windows 11. You need to double the core count and also add 1010 to the end of that graphics card. Since this doesn't have any sort of cameras with internal tracking, that means you're going to need some sort of tracking device, a SteamVR compliant one, something like an HTC Vive will work. You do need a Lighthouse, just one for sim racing for most cases. Much like the image that Big Screen shows for its headset of clean minimalism, the unboxing experience is exactly like that. It is a simple, uncomplicated unboxing from an incredibly small and thoughtful box. Inside there was this beautiful clear version of the Beyond 2, but they also have other colors like a black one and also one that is in the same color of American Orange Fanta, which they dubbed Nuclear Fallout or something like that. This clear version reminds me of the 90s craze, because I am that old, of everything transparent, showing the electronics like the phones, the Game Boys, the Walkmans and all of that. And, I like this little bit of nostalgia on my newish kit. And because it's clear, it really shows how intricate the design and the engineering of this small thing really is. It is an absolute sight for sore eyes. To be fair, this was one of the best unboxing experience I've had in sim racing, basically since the Fanatec BMW M4 GT3 wheel, and I think this one beats that. The IPD can be adjusted with a small tool for each eye, and there's also a detachable USB-C connection at the side for a rather long and sturdy cable. The silicone face mask is magnetic, just pop it in. So it means if you want to sell this unit, you can basically do it, because VR is more personal than any other piece of sim rig I have out there, even wheels with Alcantara. This has lots and lots of your sweat. So I feel very uncomfortable at looking at secondhand VR. And with this, basically, the new buyer can essentially just pop it off, get a new one, and, they have their kit. These lenses, they claim they have edge-to-edge clarity, and in reality, they are quite clear. And one thing that I found in terms of usability is that the strap is incredibly thoughtful. You essentially just plop them in, or basically plop them out if you don't need them. It is super easy to attach them, detach them, and adding that to that very small box, it means you can just put your VR headset away without any trouble at all within 1 or 2 minutes of being used. Despite the resolution claim of 2560 by 2560, that is only done natively at 75 Hz. If you run the 90 Hz mode of this headset, it will be done at 1980 by 1980 per eye. However, SteamVR does some sort of clever calculations and then super samples it by 1.4, which means at 90 Hz it will be running super sampled at 2560 by 2560, and then for the 75 Hz it will be running at around 3560 by 3560 per eye. That means if you are having some sort of performance issues, and that can be the case in a lot of sim racing titles, there is always some performance to be had by undersampling this headset, and to be fair, the quality of the image actually keeps to be quite reasonable. It is true, the way that this headset is built, it is really comfortable to use in terms of ergonomics. It's essentially glued to your face. The 100 grams, 120 grams, or 150 grams with the strap, they weigh absolutely nothing, and there's no light bleed from the outside. The silicone headbands is incredibly good to keep a totally pitch black environment, so the OLED screens actually work quite nicely. In terms of the OLED screens and the lenses, well, it's incredibly clear from side to side. It is easy to figure out at a glance what is happening at the corner with very little distortion, if any. What I have to say, or I can say about the color reproduction, is that it kind of reminds me a bit of the early generations of Super AMOLEDs that Samsung used to have on the S1, S2, up to basically S5, where there was a bit of grin shift happening, and this seems kind of be the same thing. On their software they have an option to change the color calibration of the headset, but I couldn't find myself a good setup for it, but it is definitely tolerable anyways. But in terms of clarity, and we're talking about here about screen door effect, well, I can tell you for the 75 Hz model or 75 Hz refresh rate, there's no screen door effect of notice over here. I don't see any difference in pixels. Probably there's even more clearer headsets than this, but at a certain point you have to ask what is clearer mean in a case like this, where it's for me already more than clear enough. Sim racing is for a lot of people about immersion, and VR is one of the best ways to have some sort of immersion. It does make you feel that you are inside, and honestly, because of how light this headset feels, it really makes you feel that you aren't really wearing much, at least compared to my experiences with the PSVR 2, and the PSVR 2 is not too bad, and the Oculus Rift. And when you're driving a prototype around Nordschleife with these seatbelt tensioners, I can tell you, it is a super immersive experience that it's very hard to match anywhere else. So I think in that regards, in terms of immersions for VR and in terms of how easy it is to use with the setup and how unobtrusive it is to your eyes, even though the FOV is not the biggest out there, there's still a little bit of that effect on the side. You do see a little bit of the end of the lenses. I think big screen did a really good job with this. With 75 Hz, everything looks the part. This type of sway they have on this game, I mean, it's really interesting to see, and especially with the car that has essentially a convertible. Using this in a cruising kind of way in Assetto Corsa with this LA Canyons, which was one of my favorite tracks, favorite mods done in Assetto Corsa ever. It's an absolute treat. The distance you are able to see with this, you can see very, very far away. And it's clear with the 75 Hz. However, it comes at the cost because racing games have such a badly unoptimized engines. It means when you're running with a lot of people, unless you have something that is really, really beefy, the extra resolution will lower your performance and you have to make some sacrifices. Honestly, for me, I'm a person that prefers frame rate over resolution. So in that case, for sim racing, it ends up that the 90 Hz refresh mode is just slightly superior for my use cases when I want to race a little more competitively, because it's better to have the situation where your performance is good all the time when the car's around, then having your performance spiking up and spiking down when in VR, that can be quite uncomfortable. Also, having a better refresh rate in sim racing is superior because we're talking about situations where your braking point is hugely important, and missing braking point by 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters oftentimes can mean a tenth or two a difference in your lap times, and having a better refresh rate will be better in that case. Doesn't mean that the 90 Hz refresh rate is bad in terms of quality of image. It's quite the opposite, but there is a appreciable significant difference in terms of clarity in the textures and in the details from the 90 Hz version. And now in LA Canyons, while we are here, we are able to gaze upon the distance, oh nice car over there, and see how cool everything looks. It may not be the most advanced headset out there. Critically, what Beyond wants to do with this is essentially destroy some of the issues that VR has as a form factor. They want to have something that is clear indeed, but also something that is so small and light that when you're using it, it basically feels like you don't have anything strapped to your face. The driving experience with this is actually pretty good, fantastic, even very good clarity, excellent. However, that is just part of the experience. The other part of the experience comes from my personal experience as a 40-year-old person whose eyesight probably has been better and hasn't been diagnosed with any eye issues. For the very first moment that I start using this, I had issues with focusing. It took me an hour or 2 hours to get used to this new focus, but even now, my eyes know that something is weird, and because of it, I cannot use this more than 1 hour or 2 hours max. And in sim racing, 1 hour stints, 2 hour stints are something really, really common. So I cannot really probably use this in any competitive sense. I can only use this in a very sporadic way. Another issue that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere else, at least from all the reviews that I've seen, is that this is a very, very small headset, of course, and the silicon actually works too well. And that means because of the heat, there's always a small fan, the heat doesn't really dissipate. It has no way to go. So if you add Tire Eyes into a headset that actually starts to heat up your eyeballs, you're going to have a double whammy of nope. And that's another reason why I cannot use this for more than 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. Maybe it is my VR sensitivity that is starting to spike up, like gluten sensitivity when you get older for some people. Maybe I do need in this room some sort of air conditioning to help out with the heat dissipation. Maybe it's a skill issue of my part. My experience generally has been somewhat okay. I do enjoy doing sim racing with this, and the level immersion is absolutely fantastic. But the downsides need to be mentioned to you because they could be even worse or probably none at all. I'm actually happy with this, but I am not mind blown.